This is an amazing scene, isn't it? The dragon, the fight, Normandy. It's almost like something from House of the Dragon. But the cool part, I'm gonna teach you how to use DaVinci Resolve from scratch by working on this scene. And we are gonna make it in just 33 minutes. So grab your sword and prepare for battle. My name is Baudilio Bay Perez. I am a filmmaker, actor, and online instructor. But today, the main goal is to learn how to use DaVinci Resolve from scratch by working on this scene. So let's open the project and jump right in. 33 minutes to learn everything you need to get started with DaVinci Resolve. So DaVinci Resolve is opening. I'm gonna click on Untitled Project. I'm gonna type down a name, Dragon YouTube, and I'm gonna click on Create. And DaVinci Resolve is opened. But before addressing anything, we must go directly to this gear icon over here to establish the main settings of our project. And the most important is the timeline resolution. So I'm gonna type down right here 2560 per 1240 pixels. But you are able to select all these options over here. Everything is gonna depend on your needs and on your computer performance. Here I'm gonna leave this pixel aspect ratio on a square. That is very important not to distort the pixel nature, you know? Here the timeline frame rate is very important also, so I'm gonna leave 24 because it's the most cinematic frame rate. Video monitoring, this monitor you can see here, you will be able to see that monitor on an external monitor, and this manages that external monitor. Now let's move on to this tab, Fairlight, and this was created to establish the audio resolution. I'm gonna leave this in 48,000 Hz per second. That is enough for this project. And I'm gonna click on Save. Now I'm gonna look for my files, and I'm gonna drag this folder into this another folder where you read Master. DaVinci Resolve is going to ask if I want to change the project frame rate, and I'm going to click on Don't Change. And now we are ready to address DaVinci's layout. Almost every video editing software follows this same pattern. First of all, we are going to find on the right side the inspector, where you are going to find the main parameters of a clip. For example, this rotation angle, the zoom, the position, cropping, and you can go back to the initial state by clicking on this circle on the right side of every single parameter. Right in the center, you're going to find the main monitor where you're going to preview what you are doing on the timeline. You will be able to display two monitors to differentiate what you are doing on the timeline and what you have on the main tray. The timeline is this part below that in turn is divided by two spaces. The top one is dedicated to video and that one on the bottom is dedicated to audio. This is the actual audio of the clip. And you can notice that the main monitor is displaying two images, the right one to the timeline and the left one to that clip I have selected on the main tray on my folder. You will be able to move as you want across the timeline. For example, you can zoom in and zoom out by pressing Option plus scroll mouse wheel. On PC is Alt. And by pressing Command plus scroll mouse wheel, you can move to the right and to the left across the timeline. I'm gonna mute this audio channel over here because I don't want to hear the audio for the moment. And I will go straight forward to the most important tools when it comes to editing. I'm gonna drag other files into the timeline. First of all, you must know that you will be able to overlap these clips, to move these clips as you want, to create the story you want. But most importantly, you will be able to select the exact fragment you want from one clip. I'm gonna click on this blade and also on this magnet you can see here. So these combined tools will allow you to cut in the exact point where the cursor is positioned. And I will be able to delete what I don't want. I'm going to delete the audio and also this other part, that excess I don't want, you know? I'm going to click on this slice. And what I need to do is to fill up this space on the canvas you can see here. I'm going to fold this media pool and I'm going to zoom in to fill up the entire canvas. That checkboard background is indicating this space is empty. I'm going to move this other parameter, this position right here. I'm going to do exactly the same with this another clip by applying another strategy. I'm not going to chop the clip with a blade, but I'm going to trim the video by moving the sides, for example, like that. I'm selecting the borders and moving to the place I want. I'm going to delete the audio also. And in the same breath, I'm going to zoom in this footage to fill up the entire canvas. I'm going to move this upwards a little bit, and that's it. But the most important thing is that you will be able to automate all these parameters. I'm going to unfold this Keyframes tab. And if you click on this dot that is on the right side of every single parameter, you will activate the Keyframes track. I'm going to click right here. I'm going to do automations for the zoom and position. So I'm going to move the cursor to some point forward. And by simply moving the parameter, automatically, this keyframes panel is going to create another keyframe. And now you have this automation. So I'm distorting these parameters over time. You will be able to delete these keyframes and you will be able to do this same automation with other parameters, for example, cropping. You can set these first keyframes and do the same process. On the other hand, on this effect tab, you will be able to add effects. For example, video transitions are very important. I'm going to add this one, box wipe, very nice transition. You can check what you are doing on full screen by pressing Command+F. This is another one, foreground wipe. It's a very nice transition. And if you want to set a loop to check your video, you can click on I and O to set an in and an output in order to do that loop. Of course, you must click right here on this circle, and then when you click on play, the video is gonna loop on this selection, you know? That is very important. It's not that complicated. You can do exactly the same with these effects. I will add this film damage, for example, to this clip. You can notice that if I go to this inspector, the effects tab is available to be modified as I want. And by positioning the cursor on every single effect, you will have a kind of preview on your canvas on how this effect looks like. I'm gonna add this another clip on top of the current clips I have on the timeline, and I'm going to teach you something interesting. The composite. You will be able to select any of these parameters to change the way this clip blends with the other ones below. But this is quite interesting when it comes to blending clips in the timeline. It's very important to have a general notion about DaVinci Resolve. If we go to the media page, we must understand that this folder here below corresponds to this media pool we have here on the edit page. But this tray on top corresponds to the computer browser. You will be able to move your files from your computer directly into the project's main tray, that is this part below. But also you will be able to create these power bins. Here you're going to store those files you're going to use across different projects. And you have also the smart bins. For example, a folder dedicated only to MP3 files. So on that folder will be stored all the MP3 files. And you're going to find these same smart bins and power bins on the edit page right here on the media pool, where you can read power bins and smart bins. In the case of the cut page on DaVinci Resolve, was created to facilitate the work for assemblers, who is the one who creates the story, the general montage. And now that we have this first approach, let's move on directly into the cutter page. You can notice that it has a similar structure than the edit page. On this right panel, you're going to find a notes tray. I'm able to create as many notes as I want by clicking on the right mouse button and add node, add serial, for example. I can follow another kind of organization on these nodes. For example, this parallel is a different way to overlap effects. As I mentioned, every single node is a different instruction in terms of color grading. Right in the center, we are going to find the main canvas, the main monitor. And here on the left side, you will find the gallery tab, the media pool tab, and also this clips tab, which is a kind of mini timeline to have some reference about those clips next to the clip you are working on. I mean, those clips you can see here are those ones on the timeline, you know? And we are going to move on to these 3 panels on the bottom. Let's start with this panel on the left. These primary wheels were created to modify the color nature of your clip in a general way. For example, I'm going to modify here the gamma. You can notice the difference on the canvas, and we also have high dynamic range wheels. They were created to do more specific modifications. The following panel on the center is the selector, to select the specific range you want to modify on your clip. And this panel on the right is the scopes. In this case, you can notice that the most prominent color on the canvas is light blue tone. The scopes is indicating that the blue tones are higher than the rest ones, a technical reference about the structure of your color. I want to enhance that sky. I'm going to use these power windows to make it. This icon over here, window, and also this pen over here. And I'm going to start creating the mask. For example, like that. This is the part I want to modify from the sky, and I'm gonna move on to this dropper, that is the qualifier, and I'm gonna select some point of the sky, and then I'm gonna click on Shift+H, and now you can notice my selection of the canvas. I can go back to the power window to soften the borders, for example, these edges over here, to make it blend with the background, and now I have a better selection. Once you have finished the selection, we are ready to modify the colors. I'm going to modify the gamma, for example, to move the color to the red tones. I'm going to create this another node. This another node is to enhance the dark tones by moving this wheel over here. I'm going to modify the temperature also. I'm going to zoom in into the clip by pressing Command and Scroll's mouse wheel. And what I want to do now is to remove those voices on the background. So I'm going to create another serial node, and I'm going to unfold this effects tab. And on this list, this browser you can see here, you will be able to select the effect you want. I'm going to type down here patch replacer, and I'm going to drop this patch replacer into this last node. Here you can see that you have 2 selectors, the source and the target. So what we need to do is to establish what is the source and what is the target we want to modify, you know. I'm gonna blend the edges to make it blend with the background, you know. It's very simple, very easy. Most of all when your footage is static, you know. I'm gonna create another patch replacer and this another node, and I'm gonna remove the rest of the values. I'm going to create another serial node to do another modification in terms of color. I'm going to increase a little bit the black tones. And now I'm going to go back to the edit page and pay attention what we're going to do. I'm going to duplicate this clip with Command C and Command V, and I'm going to overlap this same clip. I mean, it's like a sandwich, you know? You can notice that I have the same clips overlapped. And now on the clip that is on the top, I'm going to create another serial node, and I'm going to activate this tool over here on the selector panel, the magic mask tool. I'm going to select the character, for example, like that. I'm going to click on better, but I need to create an alpha output for this clip. And I'm going to connect this blue square you can see on the last node to the alpha output. And now by clicking on Shift and H, you can notice my selection. And if you want to enhance the edges, you can try all of these parameters. And then you are ready to track all the selection. Once you have finished the tracking, we can go back to the other clip, I mean that clip that is in the bottom. You can notice that there are two clips, you know? So you're gonna select the clip that is at the bottom, and we are gonna modify the lighting. Now I'm gonna add another node and I'm gonna add a noise reduction effect. I'm gonna move the threshold and that's it. Pay attention how interesting it becomes by splitting the image in layers. And the most interesting thing is that by doing this, I can add anything between these two layers. For example, I'm gonna look for a title effect. This one, for example, I'm gonna drag this into the timeline. I'm gonna type down dragon scene, for example. I'm able to modify some parameters. I'm gonna modify the color and I'm gonna move this text in between and pay attention how it looks like. Basically, you can add anything in between, but this time we are gonna use Fusion. So what we need to do, we have to check our assets first, this dragon, this fire, and also these other assets I have here, this water. So what we need to do is to add this part to the timeline. Now I'm going to transform these two clips into a new compound clip. I'm going to select these two clips and I'm going to click on the right mouse button and I'm going to select new compound clip, create, and I'm going to trim this to match the animation length. And now what we need to do is to transform this into Fusion clip. And now we have a new Fusion clip. We can remove this animation from here and move on to the Fusion page. On the bottom, we have the nodes tray. These are two nodes. Once you click on one node, you can access to the inspector where you're going to find all the main parameters related to that node. Right in the center, you have the main monitor. You will be able to unfold two monitors because these two monitors corresponds to these two dots below every single node. That is the reason why you can see the same image on both monitors. Here on the left, you can see the Effects tab in the same way as in the previous pages. I'm going to drag this ambient light, for example, into the nodes tray, so you can see that it becomes a node here. But also on this stripe right here, this panel, all these tools you can see here, all these icons are nodes also. For example, this text node, I'm gonna delete this one. They are masks, effects, everything is a node into the nodes tray. You're gonna have also the media pool where you're gonna find all your assets. I'm gonna drag, for example, the dragon, this animation into the nodes tray, and also the fire we are gonna use. I'm gonna delete this ambient light. And also you will have right here this mini timeline to have some reference about your actual montage. And you can fold and unfold this to have more space. But first of all, in order to understand what is a nodes tree, so we must understand the nodes structure as if it were a highway. The highway has an entrance and an output. A tree doesn't have any of that. So if I want to add this dragon into this highway, I have to select the node and drop it on this yellow wire you can see here. This yellow wire represents the background, but you can notice that the Fusion environment is creating this another node called Merge. This Merge node was created to give us instructions that all the effects that are going to be on this foreground are going to affect only the dragon. I'm going to give you an example. I'm going to add this color corrector. Pay attention that I'm pressing Shift and Space and I'm accessing to this browser that allows me to access to every single effect, every single mask and node available on DaVinci Resolve. And you can notice I'm going to check this pre-divide and pause multiply because we are working in an animation. And I'm going to modify some colors over here. But if I remove the merge node, for example, and I attach these two nodes directly into the highway, pay attention what is happening. The color corrector is detaching from the node above and affecting directly the background because the color corrector itself doesn't have instructions to which node modify. Then I'm going to modify the dragon's color. I'm going to decrease the saturation, for example. I'm going to move the lighter tones to the red range, for example. But this dragon is supposed to be behind this character over here. So what we need to do is to select this media in, and I'm going to duplicate that layer. I'm gonna click on Command C and Command V. And I'm gonna add this another layer, this another node on this same highway. And the Fusion environment is gonna create another merge node. Of course, on this nodes structure, everything that is closer to the media output is closer also to the foreground. And everything that is closer to the left, I mean the media in, is closer to the background. That is the reason why I'm adding that layer after the dragon layer. And now I'm going to create a magic mask to isolate the character. So I'm going to select better here on the spectre, and I'm going to select my character on the canvas. It's exactly the same tool as in the color page. And I'm going to click on track. And now we need the fire. The fire is supposed to be behind the character also. I'm going to drop this on this highway, and it's going to create another merge node. Now I'm going to add this luma carrier, and I'm going to add this luma carrier on this green wire. Automatically, the black background disappears. I'm going to add this another node, transform node, to modify this fire, to make it smaller and to move its position. I'm going to place it closer to the dragon's mouth, for example. Remember that in Fusion, to zoom in and zoom out, you must press Command and scroll mouse wheel. But you can notice something strange here. The fire is moving in a slow motion. So I'm going to look for another node, Timespeed, and I'm going to position this right here. And I'm going to increase the speed of this clip by moving this parameter over here. I think that is good for me. I'm going to flip the image in transform. So we unfold this Keyframes tab, and I'm going to do a kind of automation to make that fire follows the dragon mouth. So it's the same principle as in the edit page. I'm going to do a kind of automation on the fire to modify the position of this across the time. And that's it. Now I need to modify the color of that fire. I'm going to create this another node, a color corrector node. And I'm going to decrease a little bit the saturation. That is good for me. I'm going to add this another animation here. I'm going to place it right here. I'm going to add another Luma K node to remove that black background. And I'm going to add another transform node to modify the position of that asset. I'm going to move this up to the wing. I'm going to modify also the time speed. I'm going to add also a color correction node. I'm going to check this because it's an animation, and I can do exactly the same process with this another asset, these rocks over here. But pay attention what we're going to do now. I'm going to create a light on the dragon because that flame you can see on the screen is supposed to affect and illuminates the dragon. I'm going to create this color correction on the dragon's layer, and I'm going to add this another node, the polygon node. This polygon is going to be connected to this color corrector, and I'm going to create this mask to modify the exact space I want to modify. You can notice that I'm modifying this part of the dragon only. And I can do a kind of automation also because the flame is irregular, you know? And it's exactly the same process. You activate the keyframes track, and by displaying this Keyframes tab, you can do the modifications you want on time. I'm going to add this last asset. It's a kind of earth that I want to add to give realism to the compositing. I'm going to create another magic mask to remove the background and to select only this earth, but I have to move this after the dragon to cover a little bit the wind, you know? So I have to move all this branch after the dragon layer. I'm going to modify the color of this sand over here. And I'm going to add a little blur over here, a Gaussian blur node to modify the blur as if it were a lens blur. And that's it. It's beautiful. We are ready to move on to the Fairlight page. you can notice that the layout is quite similar. Here on the top, you're going to find the media pool where your files are stored, and you will be able to drag your files into this timeline over here. But this time is a timeline only dedicated to audio. For example, this timeline features these 7 tracks. You can find also these tracks on the edit page. Right here on the top, you can find these meters. You will be able to check the amount of volume that every single track has. And you will be able to find these same tracks in the mixer. Right here on the top, you can unfold this panel and you can expand this panel over here and you can see all these 7 tracks. So I'm going to move on to the edit page to drag this audio file into the timeline. Pay attention that I'm doing the first stage of the sound editing process directly on the edit page. So this sound effect belongs to that C you can see on the background. So by clicking on the clip, we can access to the inspector where you're going to find the main parameters, and also you will be able to access to this tab over here on the left, the effects tab. And on this panel, you're going to find every single effect you are able to add to every single clip. But when it comes to sound editing, we can do this differently. I mean, we can add those effects on this panel directly on the track, because sometimes we need to modify all the clips inside one single track. What I mean is that directly here on the mixer, you will be able to add effects. For example, if I click on this cross over here, I can add any effects out of this list. Another important thing about the Fairlight layout is that you will be able to detach this video monitor from here. And you can place this monitor wherever you want in order to make the sounds match the image. And that is very important. So I'm going to add the rest of the sound effects. For example, these dinosaur footsteps that are going to match the dragon. This stripe above. You will be able to move across the entire audio clip and select the exact slice you want. You can see here, I'm looking for the exact sound I want. I click on I and then O, the in and the out, and then I'm able to drag this file into the timeline. So I'm going to look for another step. This one. That sounds nice. We press I and O and then I drag this into the timeline. Now we need the wing sound effect. So that is great. And I can move on to the roar. That is the most important dragon sound effect. I think that is great. I'm going to press I and O and I'm going to drag this into the timeline. But I need also a breathing sound effect. This is very nice. And I think that the fire, the flame is also sounding. And I'm going to move this flame up to here. So the next step is to clean a little bit the beginning and the end of every single clip. So by moving this white square at the beginning, I can create a kind of fade in and a fade out on every single clip. Now I'm going to go back to the Fairlight page. What we need to do now is to make those sounds match the dragon's motion. So I'm going to isolate the steps right here on the track, and I'm going to move the steps to match the dragon's motion. We must pay attention only to the sound and to the image. It's time to do the wings. Perfect. Now I'm going to add the C on the background. I'm going to disable these isolations and I'm going to edit the roar. This is the breathing and this is the roar. And this time I'm going to add a transition between these two clips. You can notice that there are 3 transitions. Cross means 3 dB, slightly lowers volume in the middle to avoid peaks, while cross plus 3 dB boosts the middle to maintain energy. This time we are going to use the balanced transition, the 0 dB transition. I'm gonna put this right here. You can modify the clip's volume directly here, this white wire in the middle of the clip, but pay attention to this. I want that distant waves sound effect stands out a little bit. So I can notice that this sound effect doesn't have enough gain. So we need to increase the volume of that track to make it match with the real mixing. And we are gonna click right here on this blue line, that is actually the equalizer. And we are going to increase right here the gain. We can modify also the equalization. I'm going to decrease the mid-tones to make the rest of the sound effects stand out. Right here on this blue square, I'm able to move the pan of that C. But I want to do a last step. I want to add a delay effect into that track, the roar track. This is the track 5. I go to the track 5 and I'm going to click right here on this cross that corresponds to the effects tab. And I'm going to look for Fairlight effects and delay. I'm going to increase the delay time on both sides, on the right and on the left, and the feedback also. And you must pay also attention to these matters over here in the mixer. These tracks are not supposed to reach the red tones because you are going to end up distorting the sound. So in order to fix that, we can also use a kind of compressor here in Dynamics. We can select the basic dialog, and that is enough to fix that. And there you are, this magnificent dragon roaring in that beach. Once you have finished all your editing, we can move on to the deliver page. We only need to click on browse and look for the folder where we want to store our file. We can type down a name, this Dragon Sandfire. We click on save. And you can select right here the format in which you want to create that file. This time is QuickTime, but there are other formats available. The codec is important. It's the codec in which you are going to compress the file to squeeze the width of that file. No? This time I'm going to use H264. The upper ProRes is also efficient. Here in resolution, you can select whether you want the timeline resolution or another resolution that matches your purpose or needs. The same goes for the frame rate. If you want to modify the frame rate, you will be able to do so. But the most important of all is this one, quality. In quality, when you check automatic, the software itself is going to deliver a kind of intuitive resolution depending on the nature of those settings you established at the beginning. But you can restrict this to a specific amount of weight. For example, you can select up to 5000 KB per second. That is good enough to deliver a good quality and not overloading your file with information. You must select an in and an out to specify the selection you want to export, and then we click on Add to Render Queue, and then you click on Render 1, and that's it. You have exported the file. But we can keep doing things with this. For example, we can add an extra dust layer on top of this fusion clip, and we can use the Composite tool to create this spectacular effect. And we can combine this with another shot. For example, this character beholding the dragon. We can do the same color correction we did on the prior shot. Pay attention how I am fixing those problems on the background. I'm blurring those buildings, and I'm able to add this same dust layer on top of this shot. I'm gonna add dust on the footprint, and I'm gonna enhance the general color of this shot. And voila! And that's it. Now you know the basics of DaVinci Resolve and how to start working with your own scenes from scratch. I hope you found this tutorial useful and fun. That is exactly what I want for my students, to learn fast and enjoy the process. If you want to take your skills to the next level, I have a complete 10-hour course on DaVinci Resolve where I dive deep into video editing, AI generators, and compositing, and all the tools you need to create amazing scenes like this one. VFX, color grading, and sound design. I will leave all the links on the description down below, so you can check it out whenever you are ready.
So let me know in the comments what kind of scenes you are planning to create.
And of course, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any new tutorials. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Keep creating.